Hey everybody, this is Perch, and I'm here with Joe Pruett. How are you?
I'm doing great, Perch. Thanks for having me on your show today.
Do you find it weird? By the way, obviously my name's not Perch, but every time I say that and I'm talking to somebody like you, it always sounds really weird. Do you have the same? There.
Yeah, my name is not really Joe. It's
Ah,
probably Bruhumda. No.
there you
I'm a
go.
twin brother, so sometimes I will say I'm him.
Oh, there you go. That works. I think we want to get into. You've done a lot in your career, so I'm anxious to talk to you. And I know a lot of people who come to the channel. Actually, your name comes up a decent amount, but very specifically, we want to get to the kind of the big subject at the moment, and that is you have a campaign right now running on Zoop
Mhm.
for negative burn, and it is still open at the time people are hearing this. There's still time left to back.
So I think,
And tell me about the book. Like let's make sure people know what this book is.
well, Negative Burn is, I would say, this is my first baby. I mean, I have 3 kids, but Negative Burn's always been my first baby. I started it back when I was really just breaking into the business way back in '93 with Caliber Comics, and it just came about as my brother Jim and another friend of mine, Charles Moore, who was writing for DC and some other places at the time. We were sitting around the house one time just saying, "Hey, we should do an anthology with our friends." And a bunch of us try and break in all together. And so, yeah, it's a good idea. And then Chuck came up with the name Negative Burn, which I thought was a great name.
Mhm.
And then he and I went about, grabbing, friends, my friends, his friends, Jim's friends, whatever, and started asking people in. And then I started, doing some shows and I ran into I started off, working with Bob Burnell, Flaming Carrot at Dark Horse. So I met all of Bob's friends. That include because I say Brian Ballin. So I remember in a convention in New York City, and we're out to dinner, Brian and Richard Case and myself and a couple other guys, Andrew Robinson. And I'm sitting next to Brian. I said, "You know what? Hey Brian, I'm doing this anthology. Do you have anything you can put in here?" And he offered me his serial one shot, one pagers called Mr. Marulian, which I had done a few of those here and there. Yeah, it's okay, great. Then it came like, well, who else can I get in here? And then when Negative Burn started, it was going to be a one shot anthology. And next thing I know, it was going to be a bi monthly or mini series. And it's like, oh, it's going to be a monthly. That's going to be 32 pages, 40 pages, 48 pages, 64 pages eventually. It just kept growing and growing and became a beast. And then after the first, I think 5 issues, I kind of took on Negative Burn solo moving forward. And like I just said, it's like, who can I get in? So let me get Alan Moore, let me get Neil Gaiman, let me get David Lloyd, or whoever back in the time, Mobius. Heck, I even went out and tried to get John Mellencamp, the singer,
Mhm.
because he was a painter. And I said, well, let me see if I can get one of his paintings to use as a cover. That would be kind of cool to do. And it's funny, the story is that my wife, I've said this in a few podcasts, so I repeat myself, sorry. My wife, her second, third cousin, I'm not sure which one it was, played in his rock band when he started out. And she's from Indiana as well. And so I actually went to my wife's grandmother and who got to the cousin who got to me his home address. So I sent John Mellencamp a care package of Negative Burns and tried to talk him into it. He never responded to me. But at that point, it's that you can't get I can't get a yes, if you don't try.
Yeah. Well,
So Negative Burn. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
oh no, it is the people you did get yeses from though. I mean, I was refreshing, and so I sold this book in the stores, and I how long did it went? It went like more than
We went
40
15 issues. Went 15 issues. Yeah, I started and they say it would never last. A black white anthology with no theme attached to it. And I said, hold my beer, and went 50 issues and quit on my own. Winning, it was nominated for several, Eisner Awards and Harvey Awards and Eagle Awards and other stuff. Winning a few things here and there, but um, and then became a place where like Caliber at the time was a place you got to start your career, moved on. So with Negative Burn, my thought was, let me get the window dressing and let me get the stars of the time
Mhm.
to sell the book. But the heart and soul was always the up and comers, the Brian Bennesses and the David Macks and the John Cassidays. People like that who did a lot of their early work at Negative Burn. Paul Pope,
Right.
Terry Moore and stuff like that. And all those guys became the stars later on. So I was actually very looking back in time. I'm like, well, I'm actually kind of impressed. Here I was a young, you know, breaking in guy who got all this talent and not just an established job, but I'm very proud of the eye I used to have to grab the talent who became the stars
Yeah.
in the early days. So it was just kind of like, whatever I liked, I put in. I didn't like the idea of having it's a horror anthology, it's a sci-fi thing, because then you kind of limit your potential, what you can have, but who you can have. So I like a little bit of everything. If you listen to my music and pull up my iTunes, whatever, I'm all over the place, and that's how my reading and my comics, everything. I'm all over the place. I like everything. Um, so that reflects my personality.
No, it was a great, I mean, just to let that sink in for a lot of people, because a lot of anthologies today, if you're a modern or more modern comic fan, whatever that means, the anthology means a yearly thing, usually tied to, summer, or there's the Pride anthology, or there's anthologies, but they're more themed, if you will.
All right.
And you came out, and this was 92? Was that
93?
93?
93 is number one.
This is why I should research things. All right, so I was close. You started what was an indie book with a ton of talent. You did have some big names there. You mentioned Alan Moore. I think you had Dave Gibbons at one point.
And later, yeah, I put him and Alan Moore together on one of Alan's songs. I had a little thing in there. It kind of came throughout the issues called Alan Moore's Songbook, where Alan actually, I couldn't get him to do anything original. So what he offered me in return is like, well, I've recorded a lot of these songs. If you want to adapt them into comics, I'll let you do that. And so I got recordings on the cassette tapes of him singing these songs that he had written. And then I'll get the songs and like, okay, well, this song, Trampling Tokyo. I said, that's Art Adams. I got to get Art Adams to do that one. And et cetera, et cetera. So that was very interesting.
Okay. Now, so of these songs that you got on tape, were they, was it studio quality, or was it like him in the bathroom?
No, he had a studio. He also sees himself as a musician, and so he actually, I have a CD he did, and I have the cassette tapes from the early days. I have them somewhere still. I hope I still have them somewhere, because that's just classic.
Yeah.
Who has Alan Moore singing? And
That's awesome. I am picturing him kind of out on the lawn, though, just speaking into a cheap recorder. But no, that's perfect. I think, well, at the time, though, the perception, because I was definitely selling comics and a retailer at that time, and this is when Images is making some headway
coming out, right?
And but Negative Burn was there. I mean, you were the, I don't know, you were the voice of the indies to some extent. It was this, as you said, it was this curated book, a ton of talent in there, a lot of talent that would go on to do pretty major things, but some big names at the time as well. And it was this very, for lack of a word, consistent book where there was just a lot of different things in it. And to your point, the stories were, there was no single theme.
No, very centric, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it was pretty. I mean, it was a fairly beloved book at the time. I mean, it was a comic shop favorite.
It was never a huge seller. I mean, it was very, like award nominated. No, that doesn't get sales, but it was very nice to have those award nominations. And it was a steady seller, never a big seller.
Mm-hmm.
But that's okay. It was me, learning, getting my feet wet, and breaking in and getting to work with all this amazing talent and up and coming and classic people I grew up loving. And so it was one of the best time of my life, honestly.
Well, and now the topic of the day is there's this book on Zoop, and hopefully people are seeing the link in the description. You can look at the page, or wherever you besieged by links, you can find it easily, or you can just search Zoop and Negative Bird, you find it. You have this book. It is all new. Just correct me wrong. It's brand
all new material, right?
The talent list on this is insane, and I say that from amazing list of people there. Also, as an editor, some names on here that do really amazing stories, but people don't get. I mean, they're just. It's hard to obtain some of this talent. If you're Marvel and DC, you can get Paul Pope to do a book for you, but that's challenging as an editor to get that done. And you've got a crazy amount of names here.
Well, yeah, it was like I wanted some alumni. Paul being one of the guys when it's breaking, he did a lot of Negro Burn. Paul was kind of my go-to guy in the early days of Negro Burn, where I had somebody didn't get their story in enough time, so I had 6 pages. So I call Paul up, say, hey, I need you. You got a story in you? I got some pages for you. How many pages you need? I said 6. Okay, I'll get it to you next week. And so he was my go-to guy to fill in, my fill-in guy. So to start the new relaunch Negro Burn, I hope to do more than just the 1 volume. Is going back to the old thing when I started Negro Burn. I need the window dressing. I need the eye candy. Same thing like when we started Aftershock Comics up. I went out and got Brian Azrael on Paul Jenkins and Garth Ennis at the time. So I need people. Hey, look at us. We're over here. Nice and shiny and new. And that's how this Negro Burn. So it's a lot of star talent because, as you said, and I was very surprised too, is how many people remember it,
Yeah,
or have fond memories of it, or hey, you gave my star. And I had a couple creators coming to get a lot of work today. I didn't realize I gave them their start in Negative Burn, but until they told me that. So, oh, really? That was my first published work. Thanks so much. I was like, oh, well, you're welcome. But again, we're trying to get attention right away, and yeah, this celebrate. It's a celebration of the history, and so I want to have alumni like the Paul Popes and Paul Jenkins and a few other guys. Phil Hester was number 1 himself, myself, and then also give a chance to people who I always wanted in the book, and either at the time I couldn't get them, like a Peter Milligan, for instance, or they weren't really in the industry at the time, like a Francesco Figueroa, those kind of people, or those Sam Keith that I couldn't get back in the day. That was the Max days.
mm-hmm.
So it's exciting to me to bring in people who I've always wanted in there and never had a chance to be in there, as well as bring back alumni. And since I announced this series, it's amazing how many alumni have come back to me and say, hey, can I get in? Can I get in? I was like, well, this one's full, but if it does well enough, I do want to do more. I like to do 3 or 4 a year. So,
So it's critical for the people listening to this, and this is I don't do hard sells here, but this is the hardest sell I would give. We have to get more.
right.
So buy this thing, go in there, and the price. And by the way, but real quick before I jump off the talent, I mean, you've got Mike Allred in here, you have Dan Panosian in here, you have a bunch of. You mentioned Sam Keith, Joe Gisco, DeMatteis is doing something for it. Like there's it's not just a few big names; it's a lot of big names and some really great talent that we just don't see a lot of anymore, or at least the work is fairly scarce.
Yeah, true. So, everybody loves doing short stories, especially when they say do a short story and do whatever you want.
It's that one, right?
So, yeah.
It's that second piece because I think I talk to creators from time to time who just they don't love the anthologies from the big 2, and a lot of that is because the confines in which they write the story is so narrow. There is often weeks or months where they hear nothing, so they're not even sure. I can't tell you amount of creators who have said I did something for the book and I got paid, but I have no idea if it's actually going to get in there or not. Nobody knows. But they have ideas, and so to be able to have a vehicle, especially with kind of this level of talent all in one place, and there's no confines of it has to be a horror story or it has to be a western or whatever. It's your idea, just bring it, and that's what you do.
As long as I like it.
Yeah, as long as you like it. So the bar is you have to like it.
Yeah, but the odds are 90% of the time I will like it.
That's awesome. Well, the book is just to get kind of some other logistics here. We can get back to some of the other pieces. So the other thing that's kind of noticeable is, look, a lot of crowdfunded books, I think we're seeing the prices kind of hike on a lot of things. And in this case, you have a digital version for $15 and you have a actual physical comic for $25. Is that right?
Right.
and a bunch of different covers and all that. How big is the book when all's said?
Well, right now it's listed at 64 pages, but it will be 80 pages by the time it's all said and done.
Good lord. Okay, so 80 pages with top talent, $25.
Mhm.
All right, that's a good deal.
No, it's not bad. It's if I could do it lower, I would. Um, but the reality is, again, I want to make sure that the creators who are doing this on pennies on the dollar get. Hopefully, we raise more than we've asked for, so I can pay. The way I told them, so you'll get this much money at this point. I'll increase it to this much money at this point. You'll get this much money at this point. So I like to get it up so that they actually are getting a fair wage,
Yeah.
not doing it because they're doing it as a favor to me. Even myself, I'm not going to make any money until we get, you know, double what we have now, if not more. Because I'm doing it because I love it, and I like to make some money because we all have bills to pay.
Who wouldn't? Yeah.
Um, but at the end of the day, if I didn't make any money, I'll be okay if we get the book out.
Well, that's admirable, and I'm glad you're doing it, and I love to see it return. And I think the nice part for people who are listening to this now or thinking about, do I back this? Look, it's a safe bet at this point. It's made its number. So at this point, you're just paying to get a good book in your hands. That is so. I mean, it's a nice safe deal.
Yeah, we're only like $500 or $600 away from getting the first stretch goal, which increases the page count to 72. And then another 2,500 from that, it goes up to 80. Um, so yeah, it's going to be 80 before it's all said and done because that's the number I had in my mind the whole time.
It's a great deal, and I think for a lot of people, particularly listening to the show, I hear a lot of people talking about how I support the indies, or I'm dissatisfied with something in the big two, or it's whatever it happens to be. Well, here you go. It's an indie book. It's raw stories from their creators, and it's some just pretty stellar talent in there. So click the link now. Go buy. Um, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about. Well, I mean, kind of it can go in a bunch of different directions now because it's so exciting to talk to you. Um, well, actually, I'll ask this question first 'cause I like to put people on the spot. So you have a bunch of great creators here. Which one's your favorite?
My all-time favorite artist is Brian Ballin.
Okay.
Of course, I have Brian. He was in the first 50 issues of the original run. I had a second 21 issue run while I was doing Desperado publishing and with Image as well. But the first 50 is the classic run. So Brian, I had to have Brian in. He's my favorite artist of all time, and so yeah, there's your answer.
It's a love question. I love the whenever somebody's putting a bunch of talent together, and I know a lot of them then come and listen, and then it's like, okay, pick your favorite, and they all sit there like, where's he gonna go? Anyway, um, I think I wanted to talk to you because you've also written a bunch of comics yourself, of course. You did do work both on the indie scene, obviously, through Negative Burn, but also you were part of of Marvel during the I call probably when the X-Men had a lot going for it. That's a horrible way to say that. But we're in that kind of Age of Apocalypse time frame, which a lot of people remember fondly. They're now adapting cartoons to it and everything else. How is it going from you're in control of your own stuff, you're doing work on the indie books, you're working for the big two, and you're working on something that has a pretty big spotlight on it at the time. How is that experience different?
That was it was a surprise to tell you the truth. And I grew up a Marvel zombie, so of course I was a big Marvel fan. Um, then in the '80s, I discovered like Pacific Comics and Eclipse Comics and Cerebus and First Comics and all that stuff, and I became a huge independent comics fan to the point where from that point forward until the late '90s, I would call it independent comic snob. Or like, oh, if I wanted to, I rarely bought a Marvel or DC book, and if I did, I was kind of like, I hope nobody sees me.
Yeah.
I wear a mask in here and buy it notes silently. But then when I was leaving Caliber, unfortunately, I didn't want to leave Caliber at the time, but we had the distribution wars of 97.
Oh yes.
Pretty much killed us all in indie comics. Caliber went from being like I think we're like number 8 or something like that in publishing to getting destroyed by the distribution wars. I mean, we were owed six figures that we never got back. Like that killed us pretty much. And so I was leaving there because I saw the writing on the wall, and that's when we started having problems paying people. I said, "Well, I'm gonna go ahead and um, keep some friendships and go ahead and leave now." um, and there was a article in a British magazine. I don't know where it came from, and but I think Mike Perkins, who was first came up in Negative Burn too. I think it was me. The article mentioned me and Mike and Brian Bendis and David Mack and Andrew Robinson, who I was doing Dusty Star with at the time too, over to Image. And actually, his very first published work was Negative Burn #1's cover. He did a painted cover while he's still a student at Savannah School of Art and Design. We were all mentioned, and maybe Phil Hester too. We're all mentioned as like Marvel was wanted to headhunt hot indie guys, and we all got together. So I wrote who at Marvel was headhunting us.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody knew who it was, and somebody said, "Well, maybe it's this guy, this assistant editor named Jason Liebig, who was an assistant editor of the X-Men titles, because he has an indie mentality. He likes the indie creators." And I said, "Okay, fine. I'll reach out to Jason and just see if I didn't know him, if it was him." And he goes, "Well, no, it's not me, but send me your stuff. Let me take a look at it." And he liked what he saw, and that's how I got into Marvel. Just because some random magazine article that Ike Perkins picked up in England made me reach out to them. And when I got to Marvel, it was kind of like, again, I was an indie snob at this time. But I started working on the X-Men titles. I'm like, how the hell did this just happen? But getting into it's like my childhood came back to me.
Yeah.
All these toys I grew up with in the sandbox and getting to craft these adventures, and it was great fun. It was a lot different. Sometimes I had my own control. I could write what I wanted to, but once I started getting into the like my Magneto Rex and was a lot me. But once I started into the X-Men title, they offered me Cable with Rob Liefeld, and they offered me X-Men Limited, which at the time it used to be like a spotlight title for titles. But when I took it over, they wanted Jason's idea was to merge it in with X-Men and the Kenny X-Men so that we all were in the same cohesive universe and,
Yep.
and time frame. So we were just an extension of that, of what it was. Alan Davis when I first started, then Chris Claremont took over the X titles. So I would get their scripts. I had to wait for their scripts, and then so I could figure out what I had to do. And it seems like then it was like every month was a different event crossover.
You don't say. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. And we had the apocalypse stuff, which is fine. And then it's like, oh, next month it's going to be this and it's going to be that. And it was like, so I never felt like I had a grasp on actually writing my own cells. I'd always conform to what they were doing across the X universe for that month. And about that, so at that time, I started. I was let go off of Cable because they came back where they decided they were going to have a 5 or 6 months gap between issues, not issues, but between the storyline themselves would be 6 month gaps. And 6 months later, and what they did at that point is, okay, let's just do all new creative teams across the board.
Yep.
So I was off Cable because of that. Brett Booth and I stayed on X-Men Limited. I think we were the only two who stayed on their title. X-Men Limited was us, but everybody else was scattered and replaced. So at that point, I started lining up projects with the X office that were working with people I wanted to work with. And so, like, I had lined up a Rogue miniseries with Mike Wieringo. I had lined up a Beast miniseries with Phil Hester, a Wolverine Psylocke miniseries that's going to be painted by Esad Ribic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the guy who brought him actually Esad into Marvel to do this miniseries. And then it never came out. They kept going, oh, we need, Steve Root is leaving X-Men Children of the Atom, so we needed another painter to replace them. Can we borrow Esad? Okay, yeah. Oh, we have we need to fill in the issue for this exhibit here. Can we borrow your software for that? And by the time all that was done, the editors were fired and let go. So my thing never happened. But I also lined up Brian Stelfreeze and Banshee. I was going to do with an artist named Jordan Raskin. And I'm sure the Cyclops, I was going to do a miniseries with that with Brett Booth. And then the regime changed at Marvel. Bob Harris was out, and my editors got fired, and all my projects got canceled. This is right after I quit X-Men Unlimited too. And the one that got saved was the Brian Stelfreeze Domino miniseries, because Stelfreeze called up and personally asked for a favor. I really want to do this project. Can we keep this on, keep this one in? So they allowed that to happen. So that one stayed, but everything else was gone. And then I was out of Marvel. So
I can't tell you. So, I mean, I don't know if you know this about me personally, but I own all the X-Men issues. I have a complete run. It pains me to no end to hear this story, because what followed wasn't ideal to this timeline you're talking about. And you're listing off these projects, and it's, I mean, the idea of getting a Cyclops book with you and Booth would have been incredible.
Yeah, I was excited. I was like, oh, I want to do Rogue with Mike Wieringo, who was a bit star at the time too, and he had done a Rogue miniseries earlier. And Stelfreeze of Domino. Brian, I had joined in Gaijin Studios here in Atlanta, which was like Stelfreeze and Alan Hughes and Cully Hamner and that group. And so I got to work with Brian right when I was moving into the studio. That's right. So I was there for like 3 years. And then later on in life, me, Brian, and Paul Jenkins had studio space together, a movie studio, when I was doing Aftershock. That was a lot of fun too. I enjoyed the studio environment. But yeah, so it was fun because I got to work with my friends. And I would have gotten to work with my friends, I'll put it that way. And we had like big ideas, and I was super excited about bringing the SOD in to do that painted Wolverine style like miniseries. I love painted comics. I'm actually working on a potential one now. So anyway, what could have been,
What could have been, yeah. I mean, what strikes me through kind of both the indie and what you're talking about here with X-Men is, and it's going to sound like kind of a dumb question for an editor, but you curated, I mean, a pretty massive amount of talent through your books. I mean, people who, again, you're mentioning these names very casually, and these are people who are at the top of things today. And I just, how much of, I guess my question is like, how do you prepare yourself for that? How do you get to a place where you can spot talent, where you see somebody coming in, you're like, that guy's going to be big, or this person is definitely somebody I want to work with? I know a lot of creators are trying to come in now. There's the whole dialogue about, what kind of Instagram presence do you need? I mean, stuff like that. But how did you have such a good eye for talent?
that's a great question. I just knew what I liked. I read a lot. Like I said, I read a lot of indie books, and so I saw a lot of new talent coming up, and I did a lot of conventions, and a lot of dinners. Again, when I started off with Bob Burden, I broke in, wanted to be an artist.
Mhm.
I think I was going to be an artist. I became Bob's assistant. I think I was going to be an artist, and the first people I met within the first 3 or 4 months, I met Dave Sim and Dave Stevens and Bernie Wrightson and Al Williamson. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm never going to be not going to be an artist. I am on to not be an artist because these guys blow me away, Jaime Hernandez, etc. And I don't have the reality. I didn't have the talent or the patience or the speed to be an artist. So I said, well, I guess I'll be a writer, because I always thought I'd do both, And then as writing was starting off, I started off with a book in 92 with Caliber, a short story for Kilroy Is Here character I did at Caliber for the 90s, which, by the way, I'm bringing back in the Image book one shot in April.
Oh, cool.
I'm trying to reinvent the character a little bit for a new age, and see if there's any interest. And if there is, I'll do more. But as far as that, so I met all these these stars, these great people early, which a lot of people probably can't say they did. And that helped. Because when I started pitching my first project, which was Kilroy, I was actually hooked up with Tundra. If you remember Kevin Easton's company,
Mhm.
Tundra, the
Oh,
time, fantastic place. They were doing everything great when they first started out. And strange enough, my editor at Tundra was Paul Jenkins.
oh, okay.
Nobody knew who Paul was at that. He was, he came in with Mirage on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And so he became the editor at Tundra, and he championed me at Tundra until Tundra fell apart. But the way I pitched my project here, I'm a nobody, an unknown. And my artist at the time was also an unknown. He never ended up being my artist, besides the first short story. But I went out and got Brian Ballin. I went out and got Bernie Wrightson. I went out and got Michael Kaluta. All people I met through Bob to commit to covers.
Yeah.
And so, and then Brian did some covers for me. And then I got Paul Chadwick, who I loved. Concrete was my favorite books. And
Yeah.
I sent him the first story, and he gave me a blurb, for it. So I could use him. He was a big deal at the time too. And so being an unknown, I knew I couldn't get attention myself. So like I always say, I need eye candy. So I got these stars. And once I see the stars were attached, it's like, oh, let me look at the pitch. And that's how it happened. Um,
I think you mentioned something there. I think a difference between the 90s or the 80s, 90s, and today is you do see a lot of the cover artist is rarely the interior artist today in a lot
yeah.
of
So, and I was granted all those guys were interior, just doing covers for me. Yeah.
but it was different. I guess you had to be there a little bit in the 90s. It wasn't quite the same way. You did have people doing covers that were different, kind of what you just mentioned, but what you just said struck kind of a chord with me because that was the perception was not, oh, I'm getting cheated because they're not doing the interior. The perception was this must be a good book because somebody of this caliber is willing
Right.
to live their time. That is not the perception today, but that's absolutely how it
Yeah.
used.
Brian Ballin or Dave McKean, doing Sandman and Hope Laser covers. And you just wanted you needed that striking image. Now, the interior can't be bad.
Right, right,
It
yeah.
doesn't have to be the same. At least it was. That's I still do that. When I was doing Black Eyed Kids Aftershock, I had Simon Krasansky doing the interior art, but I had Francesco Francavilla doing all the covers because I wanted something that was eye catching on the outside, and he was doing the fantastic, crazy. I know his covers like Sandman. The covers rarely matched what was inside,
Yeah.
but it was just eye catching that you
Yeah.
looked at. And if you can get the person to look at the cover on the stand, then they'll like pick it up and they'll look inside. As long as what you see inside is also eye catching,
Mhm.
it works fine.
Yeah, no, it's just it's funny how I think, people today it feels a little bit more like a trick, and I think a lot of that's the gimmick covers more than the guest artist. It's like, we're doing superheroes and skateboard outfits, this month, whatever. That's but there was this perception of quality. You're absolutely right. You couldn't open the book and then it's garbage, it has to
Trick that and
there.
it as well.
But there was a perception of like, man, how did he get, McKean to do this? And this is a really striking image, and I know that artist, so this must be a quality book. And I think there's just it's one of those things that shifted, I think, a bit.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. You
How so you go through this experience at Marvel, you're doing these books at a pretty relatively hot time. You have a lot of different creators you're working with. You brought in some pretty amazing people that, would have gone on to be pretty big stars. You then you go back and you come back at Negative Burn again, or do I have the timeline wrong? Or did you when was your second run of Mega? Was this still in the 90s?
The Negaburn 1 series was 93 to beginning 98. Negaburn 2 series was when I was doing Desperate on the Image. So that would have been 2006, 2008, probably.
That's what I thought. Okay, I've got the timeline. My muddled brain here. Um, what was the difference between kind of the first time you did this and the second? So you had your first run.
Big difference.
Yeah. What were some of the big? I mean, the comic industry had changed a lot during that time period.
Well, the difference to me, and this is all my fault, and I'm not trying to demean the second series at all, because a lot of talented people were in that book and that series, and a lot of good stuff were in there. I didn't have the drive I did for the first one. So the first series, as I mentioned, I was going out. I'm trying to get Will Eisner. I am getting Mobius, and I was trying whoever I like. I was in touch with somehow or another. I didn't get everybody, but I tried. And I was driven. The second series, I was driven, but I was doing my own company for the first time, and so I was not as focused, I guess you could say, because I was not only doing Negative Burn, and even in the first series, Negative Burn, I was also writing several issue comics and stuff too. But and eventually went on staff at Caliber Comics. But the second series, I was running the company, and I was trying to get every book out, and I was doing all the design work, and I was doing all the dealing with distributors, dealing with the printers. I had one assistant, and so it was a lot of work. And so Negative Burn, the effort fell to the side, and instead of me reaching out and trying to get who I wanted, I did, which I did at the very beginning. But as the issues went on, I kind of like just took what I said, whatever came in.
Yeah.
That's what I would take. I wasn't driven to go out and make it the best project it can be. I was like, well, I gotta get another issue out. This looks good. This looks good. This looks good. With a few things here, I might get recruited. But this third series, it's me going back to the first. It's me. I'm driven again. I'm doing it. I'm not doing this because, again, to make money. I never made money on Negative Burn. Me personally, in the early issues, I never made money. I did it because I loved it, and I had a day job, and I could do that. With series, I'm driven to make it the best it can be, and I think this. And by not trying to do it monthly, I think it will help me a lot. I did 50 issues in 2021 and never missed a deadline. We always hit those monthly deadlines, and not a lot of people can say that, especially when I'm doing books that was 64 pages long. And an anthology, it's not doing when you do a comic, you're dealing with that creative team. When you do an anthology, it has like probably 8 to 10 stories in it. You're dealing with all those people. And so it's like dealing with 5, 6, 7 different titles at one time in this one book. Okay. So I am impressed. I get that deadline's never missed. But this one, again, as I'm saying, I'm back to being driven to make. This is going to be the best volume Negative Burn that's ever been out.
Oh, well. Okay.
Right now,
that's setting a pretty high bar.
It is. I hope so. And I want my next one to be better than this one.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I mean, again, so many questions for you. I'll do a very kind of cheesy fanboy one for just a moment, because he's a name that doesn't come up that often. But Mobius, how was that experience working with that artist? Because he's and
I never had. I mainly dealt with his agent at the time. Okay. I didn't deal with him personally very much. I actually I had 2 interactions with him ever. I had breakfast with him in London when I went over to the UCAC convention. That used to be the big British one, and so I was working with a guy named Dave Taylor, who I think just recently passed away this past year as an artist. He did some work at DC on Batman and stuff back in the day. I think he did a book called Tongue Lash at Dark Horse back around this time as well, in the mid 90s.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he was friend with Mobius and invited me to breakfast with him. So I have a sketch in my sketchbook that Mobius did for me at breakfast.
Oh,
so that was a big thrill to me. And then
you got a Mobius and a tape from Alan Moore. I mean, the charm life.
But no, I got some fun stuff in my sketchbook.
Oh wow.
But then I met him again. We brought him over to San Diego Comic-Con. Caliber did, when we were doing Mobius comics, which I put together, and so that was fun. So again, 2 interactions with Mobius. Mainly, that was an agent who gave me all the stuff I needed. As a matter of fact, when I had breakfast with Mobius in London, he didn't even know we were doing a book. So, but it was still, I was very thrilled to do them, meet with them, and I can always say I've worked with Mobius.
Yeah.
I can say that. Yeah.
That's that's going to be a highlight. I think with this book, with the newest version, again, genre open, right? Everything you have in there.
Yeah, anything, everything. We have a Western that Ron Mars is doing,
Oh, really?
which I don't think I don't. Maybe I've had a Western before. Actually, I think I wrote a Western one time, negative word. So it has been done.
Oh, Ron's great. That's yeah, he's been on this channel several years ago now. But what other kind of genres do you have going in this version that people can get now?
Well, there's horror stories. There's going to be like a, I call it slice of life story. I think my character is a slice of life. Of course, Steve Mouse is going to be a horror story. Mine's a horror story.
Okay.
So they all haven't come in yet because I've kind of told people, don't do a lot of work right now to make sure this is going to happen.
Yeah.
And once we know it's going to happen, then all hands on deck. Get it all to me by the end of April, so that we can have the book out in the summer. So, again, it's whatever people want to do. I'm sure, J.M. Matthias, who knows what he's going to turn into right now.
Yeah.
I think he's such a talented writer. I love his Moon Shadows, my favorite series. They do it good.
How do you when you get to like when people do start submitting things to you? Is it just kind of do you open up email, or how do you like? How is it just a reveal to you? Is it Comic Christmas? You're just getting pages in and
Well, like, no, Mike Carey sent me over 2 pitches. I said, which one? I said, okay, I'll take that one. How about that? And then see now, well, I've written this story, I haven't published it. You want this one? I said, let me look at it. Okay, I like that. Okay, we'll do that. And same thing with Ron. He was, I got a Western I want to do with Tom Rainey. I was like, I worked with Tom briefly back in the Marvel days. And I said, yeah, okay, I'll take this one too. Yeah. And Brian Ballin gave me a very bizarre, a little crazy 1-pager. And that's what Brian likes to do. And there's artists, again, favorite artists. So I'll take whatever you want to give me, Brian.
I've talked to a lot of editors over the years, and one of the things, and maybe it's a little unfair, but the thing that separates a good editor from a bad editor or the opposite editor is, I think when you talk to them and they talk about the joy of opening up these pages or the file opening, or back in the old days when they're getting something out of a manila envelope or whatever, and just seeing the art for the first time, there's this giddy excitement of, I'm seeing something that I'm going to put in the hands of a bunch of people, but there's a love for every stage of that process. I hear a lot of that in you as well. I mean, you're coming back to this, you're not in this to get paid, as you said, although I would like to get you paid. So people go buy the book. But is that the secret to kind of continuing and surviving this industry, is just having that love for every step of
You have to love what you do. And once you start doing stuff you don't love, which, trust me, I've been there.
Yeah.
It's not funny. If it's not fun and you don't have the joy of it, then maybe it's time to move on to something else. For me, it's like, my joy is, I love writing, but I also love working with my friends, and I love seeing their projects come to fruition. That's why I've always ended up, and it's always, if I could just be a writer, I would. But at the same time, I'm the kind of personality where I can't just do one thing. So, I've been thought I was going to be an artist, then, became a writer, became a letterer, and, I'm an inker, I beat stuff, then I tell them I'm going to be an editor. Oh, I'm going to be a creative director and talent scout at Caliber. Oh, I'm going to be a publisher now. And I started my own companies, this 3 times. So at the end of the day, when I left Aftershock, and I spent 9 years there, I guess, and, it was a company I helped create, but it became, bigger than me. I just put it that way. And, at this stage of my life, if I'm not having fun, I don't want to do it.
Sure.
And so after leaving that, I started a little boutique horror imprint over Image called Nine Circles. Again, I'm gonna go out and work with my friends. So I went and, me and Garth Ennis and Ron V and Margaret Bennett and Adam Blass was forming this little horror company because we wanted to do hard projects. We thought it'd be fun. And so we're doing that. And that's just a little boutique, side hustle for all of us that we're doing. And just to put a book out when we get one done. I was doing one called Stay Out of the Woods, a nice little horror story with Butch Guys. And unfortunately, he passed away before it could get finished. And so I have, I think he did 13 pages out of 40 before he got sick. And I think it's the best work he's ever done. So I do want to get out to the public and so people can see this less work. But I just need to replace, find a different artist who can be in his vein, his
Mhm.
style, to get it done. And that will get done. I'm gonna get it out sooner or later because I love the story. I wrote it, and Butch and our whole intention, we decided to do. We grew up in the '70s, and I don't know if you remember. I'm not sure. You're a lot younger than me, but
Oh, I'm not, but I grew up in the '70s. I'm with you.
so we used to watch all these little Disney live action movies back in the day. Those Tom Sawyer or whatever,
Mhm.
Apple Dumping Gang, or Escape to Witch Mountain. So it's always like these teams or these kids always like in the adventure. Oh, they've discovered a pirate's cave or a hidden treasure in the woods. So we want to do something like that. So we decided we're going to do a Disney live action movie, but as a horror movie.
Nice.
So that's the vibe we went for, and I think we did pretty well.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. I think, you seem very, I mean, look, you can tell the passion for what you're doing for this book, and the creators you get to work with. I love that you're at the end of the day, you wanna do what you love, and you love working with your friends, so you're making books with your friends,
Yeah.
and that's awesome. I think I've watched so many people with a career trajectory of, "I wanna work for the big 2," and they get kinda disillusioned in that moment. Not that those books are bad. I mean, like you, I grew up a Marvel zombie as well. I've
Yeah.
got this collection. I continue to put money into something that sometimes it doesn't pay off, but it is, you've gone from the indies to the big 2 to doing the indie work again, but you seem, if I can put words right, you seem happy about it. This seems like
I mean, I wouldn't do work at the big 2 if they wanted me. I don't think they want me, but yeah, I would love to go back and play with Magneto again or something. Or I've always been I think the last thing I did more was a short story on Worth by Night in the little 2007 or 8 maybe they did a little black and white one shot called Tomb of Terror.
yep.
And so I got to do that, and that was fun. I always loved that character. I remember the first books I ever read as a kid in 1992. I went back and figured it out. It was like War by Night #2, Marvel Spotlight #5, First Ghost Rider, Avengers like 105, Spider-Man 112. So that's when I started reading comics.
Mhm.
Play with those characters to me was to be fun. I was a big Moon Knight fan. I loved it in Moon Knight, but um, I am also out of touch with what they're doing today. So I have to go stand off my little corner of the universe over here. I love to do Killraven, War of the Worlds.
Yeah.
Don McGregor's a good friend of mine, and I would love to go follow his footsteps and work on that project if they ever wanted to do it.
It's funny because I think, I was a big fan of Cleo Raven, and you'd hear, it felt like for years at conventions, and I'm trying to think, I think the last time was 2007 or 2008 at San Diego. They talked about, "Yeah, we need to do something with that again."
Really? Okay.
But it keeps coming up, and it keeps things keep not happening. So maybe we gotta put up some pressure to get that going for you.
I think Joe Lisner did a miniseries at one point, and maybe Alan Davis, I think, did one.
Oh, Davis did, yeah.
I'm not sure how long ago that was. 15 years ago, maybe.
It's been a while, yeah.
So it's time for them to do something for those who copyright.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, I mean, don't do it for the passion, do it for the copyright. You gotta hold on to those loop.
Do that. No. Well, I was talking to Brandon Peterson today. Brandon who drew Magneto Rex with me back in the X-Men days, and he and I we're working on a new project together that we're going to put out hopefully by the end of the summer.
Oh, very cool.
And we just came with the title for this characters today. Came with the title for the story. I've got the first issue plotted out and the start of the second issue. So we're supposed to start about that. Again, I get to work with a friend of mine, and that's
Mhm.
what makes us decide we're going to do it on our own. We'll we'll be published by one of the bigger companies, um, but it's on Creation. And again, I'm doing Viking Moon right now, the Image 5-issue miniseries. Marcelo Fruzen, who I've always admired as an artist. I did a short story with him at Vertigo, and Weird Western Tales.
Mhm.
That part is around 99, 2000 maybe. And I've always wanted to work with him again, just never have. He's always been busy. So I just had to reach out to him this past last summer. And I was like, hey, you want to do something? I'm looking to come out full time as a writer again. And he asked me for my ideas I had. And I sent him Viking movie. He goes, that one. I'm going to do that one right there. I love Vikings. I love werewolves. And I was like, okay, this is a sold. We got that going. So that's coming along, slowly but surely. The book's not coming out exactly on schedule, but it's going to be nice when it does come out. And again, go ahead.
Oh, no. Please keep going.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, the Curation I'm doing in April from Image. I also have my first French graphic album for the French market I've written. That would be out around, I think, the end of October, I believe. It's called The Territory. I'm doing it with Philippe Xavier. It looks like Xavier. I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce it.
Right. Yeah.
And who I found in America. We lived in America. He was a Negative Burn number 22, his first published work. And he did some things at Caliber and elsewhere. And then he moved back to France and became this amazing artist. I'm like, where was this when you were over here in the States?
It's the water.
It became now he's a big star over in France. So we were just chit-chatting and about doing a book. It's our 20 30th anniversary of knowing each other, something like that. So let's do a project together. So we're doing this 150-page graphic album in France, and we kept the U.S. rights, so we can put it over here through one of the bigger companies about the same time in the fall. So, but yeah, so I'm doing again work with my friends, doing projects I want to do with project they want to do. Like for Philippe, he's like, I said, what kind of story you want to do? He goes, I want to do something with snow and mountains.
Yep.
Okay, that's a framework I can start with.
We're starting with the visual.
Perfect. So I wrote a dystopian, 35 years in the future, Pacific Northwest story with snow and mountains for him.
Okay. I was going to say is just if people want to see your work, there's actually quite a lot of options, both in current back issues and also this project. But there's actually, in a weird way, kind of as a kind of like a microcosm of what you have with Negative Burn, you're writing a bunch of different genres, a bunch of different stories all the time. Not just in this anthology. You've got a lot of different work out there for people to check out.
Yeah. I just had a short story in Hello Darkness from Boom last month with Stefan Subic. Pronounced his name right?
I've never been sure.
Yeah.
I've talked to him and I still not sure.
Well, Eastern European names, for me, I'm very bad linguist, whatever. And I can't pronounce names. And I'm like an American. I look at names it sounds like this. How I would say it in America, like Esad Ribic, it looks like Esad Ribic,
right?
And I never knew that, and until I was corrected, I was like, "Oh, really? Okay." I went to Croatia and I hung out with all those guys, and I could be sitting there and they're all talking, Croatian. They all speak better English than I do, but I'm sitting there, blah 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 blah, blah in Croatian, and then Joe, I'm like, what did you say?
There's and hanging out and having a beer in Dubrovnik with a bunch of comic artists would be truly astounding. So.
Yeah, and the thing I'm doing real quick for you can ask me what you want to is
please
again, because I had the personality I have to always keep doing. I said I'm just going to be a writer, and then of course I started a boutique, helped start a boutique car company, which I'm editor chief of, and I was like, well, I'm just going to be a writer. Then wait, I'm going to do in the anthology again. I'm going to do Negative Burn where I have to be an editor and kind of collector and stuff like that. That's it. Okay. Well, you know what? And then in Caliber days, not Caliber days. I'm sorry, Desperado days and Image days and IDW days. I also did a series of art books. I did Brian Ballin, Craig Russell, Joe Jusko, Tim Bradstreet, Tony Harris, Jim Starlin, Jeffrey Jones, Mena Connor, George Perez, and Dave Dorman. Okay. Right. Won an Eisner for the Ballin, get nominated for Eisner for the Russell. And I am doing all the design work as well on all those books. And so, of course, what I've done now is I've started doing art books again. So I just did a Joe Jusko, the book of Jusko that came out through Kickstarter in September. and do really well. And I'm getting ready to start my new Jumpstart on.
Very nice.
So again, I want to just be a writer, but I also find myself I'm the editor in chief over here. Oh, I'm designing all these art books over here, and now I'm putting the anthologies again.
I mean, if you love comics and you love working with your friends, you're gonna wear many hats. I mean, it to me, it's like it's a guy who does a startup because he wants to develop something. If you're doing software, but then quickly you find yourself as the financial officer and lawyer and every other thing because you have such passion for the product.
Right.
You need to get it done. Maybe the summary of kind of what I've gotten for you in the almost the last hour that we've talked is it's it it's not the destination of getting to a particular publisher or comic. It's the destination of loving the books and working with people and actually creating something that you can look back on and feel that was real meaningful in your life and what you did.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, my biggest thrill to me is, as you mentioned kind of earlier, is like today I got a new page from Marcella for Viking Moon, and I was like, great, another page. Or yesterday, or Philippe, finishing up the territory over in France, and he's a page a day kind of guy. So every day I get a new page from him, and he works weekends too. I mean, it never stops. I really admire his dedication, and they're beautiful. I'm like, God, this is great. Oh, can you? And I was, I need to tweak the dialogue here. Or he might say, I decided to make this a double page splash. You want to throw a couple of voices over in there? So I was like, I do that, and but then seeing the finished product, I was like, just a couple of days ago, I got my advanced copy for the book of Jesco that again I designed and published and everything, and just getting the copies and look, I was like, man, this is why I'm doing all this. I just love the creative process, and I love to see the finished piece, and then I love to see people get it. When I did Viking #1, I was doing a signing the day of. I live in Atlanta, and I was doing a signing in Knoxville, Tennessee, the day it came out. But along the way, I decided to do a couple of drive-by signings. Well, I stopped at the store in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I stopped in the store in Cleveland, Tennessee. When I walked in the Cleveland, Tennessee store, uh, the person, the the woman who owns the store, who was behind the counter with a customer, and I said, I politely waited behind the customer, and customer, bought the book, and I was like, hey, it's me. He goes, oh yeah, Joe. She knew who I was, and I say, yeah, my new book came out. Let me see if we may sign a copy. So I'm here, and he goes, well, hey, this guy you just checked out, he just bought a copy of it. So that was really cool to me to walk in the store, and the one guy there was buying my comic.
Yeah.
Sign up for him. So that's what I love more than anything. When I go to a convention, if anybody knows who I am, I'm always surprised. I just don't think I'm not a recognizable star or anything. I'm known in small circles, and so with
Sounds like the right circles though.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So most books I sign at the conventions are going to be X-Men.
Yeah.
Vast majority of people bring me X-Men comics, which is fine. I don't mind. But when somebody brings me, a different book, like a caliber book,
Yeah.
or something, I was like, oh wow. So you know me. That's how I kind of feel like about it. I'm not just an X-Men writer. I'm like this. You bought my stuff back when I was nobody.
Yeah.
I'm on stuff. I love that.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, just an amazing career work, and you're adding to that body of work constantly. Really, really amazing. I think, Joe, listen, I wanted to say, first of all, thank you. You gave me an hour. I was saying, probably about 45 minutes. We just keep talking. And I would be selfish and could go for another hour easily and ask you about every single one of these names, but I will spare you that. The one thing though to do is we've got to make sure that, you, the person listening to this, check out the link. It's up and available. You've got a ton of good talent on there. Even despite all the names you heard during the show, there's more on there that we didn't even hit. There's so many talented names on this, including yours as well, Joe. Just thank you for doing this. I mean, it's really cool to get a book with this level of talent out, and at this price point, it's pretty awesome.
And I'll be proud of it. I want, and I think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, Joe, thank you very much. I hope we can chat again soon. Let's talk about your next book.
Got lots of books.
What's that? All right, we'll do it. All right. Well, thank you very much, and again, thanks for joining.
Okay, I appreciate it.